I just want to say that if you spend $15,000 on a new Mac Pro, it will have great performance. I'm not denying that. I also want to say that it would be competitively priced against Dell and HP computer systems.
The best part of all is how easy Apple made it to configure and order your own Mac Pro. Look at this, there's only a few options right here that make it very, very simple to order compared to, check this out. This is Dell's order form right here. Check out all of these options. Look at this. Imagine you own a company and you really need some very powerful workstation computers, and you've got to go through this whole list and you have no idea how to configure this. So what's gonna happen is you're gonna end up hiring somebody or paying somebody, a consultant, to go through all of this and tell you exactly what you need.
Did you hire a consultant to pick out the parts for this video, or did you somehow manage to do it on your own?
Dual NVIDIA Quadro RTX 6000 cards, which are very similar in performance to Apple's two Radeon Pro Vega 2s.
For myself, the Quattro RTX 4000 would probably work out just fine. I don't have to try and match your configuration.
Now going down to the hard drives, Dell actually forces you to get a 4TB hard drive in order for the 1.5 terabytes of memory to work. So we're gonna grab a 4TB hard drive. Now we're gonna go down and choose a M.2 2TB PCI Express NVMe SSD. And we'll go to the third one and choose another one right there. And then on the Mac Pro side, we just chose simply 4TB SSD right there.
Nobody is going to buy a second M.2 drive from Dell or HP if they can get it for less money at Newegg. As you notice, it states if you have 1.5 terabytes of memory, you need the 4TB boot hard drive. Who on YouTube has a Mac Pro with 1.5 terabytes of memory? I haven't seen one yet. Plus, he's got a SATA drive plus two M.2 solid-state drives. He's configuring this horribly on purpose.
Going down to the network options, we're going to choose the dual band Wi-Fi. We definitely want one of those. Now going to network cards, we're looking for a dual 10 gigabit Ethernet, but you actually don't have the option. You can only get the 5 gigabit Ethernet, so I guess we're gonna have to go with that. You don't even get 10 gig.
With Dell, HP, and Lenovo, you can install any networking card that you want to. You don't have to buy it at the time of purchase.
Maximum of 5 PCI Express slots with a single CPU. So it looks like we're not even able to get that network card on, so I guess we're gonna have to take that off.
A lot of motherboards will disable PCI Express slot 3 or perhaps PCI Express slot 4 if you install an M.2 solid state drive. There's a limited amount of bandwidth as far as PCI Express lanes go.
So now let's go down and add some Thunderbolt 3 ports. And we ran into another issue. We still are maxed out on our PCI Express slots. So it looks like we can't even do that if we want 2 GPUs on there because it's using too much of the slots.
Everyone's aware that there's a limited amount of PCI Express lanes.
With 8 PCI Express card slots, 4 of them supporting full 16x speeds.
I think the chart is there to let you know there is limited bandwidth.
So basically, if we want the extra I/O, we actually have to go back and get a dual CPU, which is going to be a lot more expensive.
Keep in mind, you're maxing out the RAM, you're putting in the most powerful graphics cards available, but somehow having dual Xeon CPUs, oh, that's all of a sudden too expensive. If you were getting an HP workstation and you were going to spend $25,000 on RAM, it would be foolish not to get a dual CPU configuration.
We're getting a total price of $74,138 compared to $44,599 for the Mac Pro.
On the Apple side, you can't get this new 2019 Mac Pro right from the store with a RAID array. You have to buy that separately from Promise. So I'm not sure how we're actually trying to compare these two systems.
Going down, we're going to choose the internal M.2. We're going to choose a 2 terabyte and then choose a second 2 terabyte, a matching one.
As you can tell with this next computer build, he's getting 2 M.2 solid-state drives again. Why? Who knows? Because in his own computer build, he only uses a 256 gigabyte solid-state drive, and you'll see his computer build later. I also want to make mention that they're getting a lot of RAM, they're getting the best graphics cards. If I'm spending over $15,000 on a computer, it better have dual CPUs.
RTX 6000s, just like before, and we've got the 2 Radeon Pro Vega 2s.
If you are buying the 2019 Mac Pro to do video editing using Final Cut Pro 10, Avid, DaVinci Resolve, or Premiere Pro, you'll probably find out if you get the dual graphics cards, the high-end graphics cards, you're going to find out that your CPU is actually the weakest link. It probably would have been better for Apple to offer a dual Xeon Mac Pro.
We've got two SSDs that are 2 terabytes each, so it'll match the 4 terabyte SSD on the Mac Pro.
Once again, he has to configure it with dual M.2 solid state drives.
Another thing that's exclusive to the Mac Pro is the Afterburner card, which boosts video editing performance when working with ProRes, which is the industry standard professional codec for editing video.
That statement is incorrect. There's a lot of people editing Red 1 RAW codec, Blackmagic Design RAW, ARRI RAW files, as well as H.264.
We tested it out with our $13,000 Mac Pro, and during playback of 8K ProRes footage, we noticed that CPU usage went from around 70% down to 2%, meaning that the Afterburner card was taking care of the workload.
You know what would also help take care of the workload for that CPU? Getting dual Xeon CPUs. Instead of using just one 12-core CPU, imagine if you had dual 16-core CPUs. So you're okay with spending $2,000 on the Afterburner card that will only speed up video editing using Final Cut Pro 10 when you're using ProRes video codec, but you're opposed to people using dual CPU configurations that would speed up rendering for 3D animation, video editing, audio editing, graphic design, and anything else that your computer's running. The Mac Pro's weakest link isn't the graphics card, it's the actual CPU. If you watch any video on YouTube, it's the CPU that'll choke before the video graphics card will. You're seeing my system playback 4K video files of Apple ProRes at full resolution, and you can see the CPU is being worked a lot more than the GPU. My computer has an 8-core CPU and an RTX 2070 graphics card. You can imagine what the performance would be if I had a 32-core AMD CPU and an RTX 2080 Ti. If your goal is to do video editing using Avid, Final Cut Pro 10, Premiere Pro, or DaVinci Resolve with the new 2019 Mac Pro, your best bet is to only get one of the high-end graphics card. Like I said, if you could get dual Xeon systems, then it would make sense to get two really high-end graphics cards, but otherwise the CPU is going to be the weakest link, and this person in his own computer build went with one graphics card, not two. As you can tell, the person that created the video build didn't buy his RAM from the Apple Corporation. Instead, he upgraded the RAM himself. But he was insistent that you had to get a dual 10 gigabit Ethernet port from either Dell or HP. The cool thing about buying generic ATX computer parts is that you get what you want. If you don't need a 10 gigabit Ethernet port, there's no sense in paying for it. When you buy a $2,100 workstation from Dell or HP, you can upgrade the RAM, the hard drive, the graphics card, even add in expansion cards as you see fit. When you're trying to compare prices between a Windows system and the new 2019 Mac Pro, there's no reason for you to try and match the specs of the Mac Pro. Instead, just pick out the system specs you want and then let the Apple users pull out their hair trying to match your specs. They simply can't do it because Apple doesn't offer it. The bottom line is, Apple could have made a $2,800 workstation or even a $3,200 workstation. That type of computer would have fit the needs for a lot of Apple users. Apple just decided to do what was best for them, not for the user. It doesn't do any good to sit there and say that, oh, it's great that the $6,000 entry-level Mac Pro has a real weak graphics card because if you do audio editing, you don't need a high-end graphics card. Well, $6,000 is still a lot of money. I mean, the competition has workstations for well under $6,000. Let me put it to you like this. What if the Dell company only offered a computer system that was almost identical to the 2019 Mac Pro, and they started off at $6,000? They'd probably lose a lot of sales to HP, and I don't doubt a lot of the workstations that they sell do fall under the $6,000 mark. If I have a big tower from Dell, HP, or Apple, I expect to be able to put hard drives inside the computer system. Why would I want something that big and bulky and then also have to have an external RAID system? If I spend $10,000 on a computer system, I expect it to have support for dual CPUs as well.
Apple's graphics cards are the only ones out there that have Thunderbolt 3 ports that are required to power the Pro Display XDR. So even if you were to somehow connect the display to a Windows Workstation PC, it would most likely be limited in one way or another, like only working at 4K resolution.
There's videos on YouTube of PCs that are connected to 8K monitors. I'm also not impressed by the MPX graphics modules. The reason being is they take up 4 PCI Express slots. For how big they are, they're really not all that powerful.
Featuring a massive 1400 watt power supply, which is utterly overkill for the base model.
I agree a 1400 watt power supply is overkill for the entry-level Mac Pro, but Apple's going to charge you for every dime of that power supply.
Built out of mostly high-strength aluminum and stainless steel, the tower is smaller than expected.
How is the Mac Pro smaller than expected? It's bigger than the average ATX case and a lot bigger than the average micro ATX case.
The Mac Pro isn't meant for the average or maybe even above average computer user. There's a reason coffee shops don't use consumer-grade espresso machines that you can buy for $500.
What in the hell does coffee have to do with the Mac Pro? The bottom line is an $1,800 Windows PC can edit video, do 3D animation, and graphic design better than the $6,000 Mac Pro.